and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few people get together, we combine our ideas together like a big old bowl of soup, and we come out with a delicious story. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. Who wants to give the recap from last week's story?
I think Seth should, because he had the opening scene, the beginning scene.
That works. Seth, do you remember what happened last week? Because this story we're doing today is a continuation. If you don't, I definitely remember.
Right. Okay. So what we have is our story opens with what would appear to be, and I think they're going to be at least part of our heroes or the group that contains the heroes, kind of being woken in the night by their tracker companion that whoever they're chasing after, he's kind of spotted where they're at, and they kind of make haste to chase after. And this world that they're in is kind of like a post-apocalyptic world where there is kind of a subterranean underground from where people would have escaped, the nuclear winter. Through some of the technology that was available to them. And you have the surface dwellers as well. I don't know if the surface dwellers have always been up there or if they're just the groups of people that have meandered out, or how that's all going to go. I can explain some more with maybe my story element in a bit. But what you have is somewhere in this world is I think Levi said it was like 15 feet tall. Roughly,
yeah, it's basically like the size of an F-150.
Yeah, kind of like a AI organic watchdog drone kind of being that has just made a factory reset. And so it has a lot of, I would say, like tracking and defense capabilities, and was designed to protect like a certain, like nuclear base of some sort, or something like that. However, after everything is come and gone, it's still kind of roaming the world above. And after so many years, it has done a factory reset. And so it's got a lot of raw potential for a lot of superpower. Not like superpower like Superman and stuff like that, but like power beyond what
a normal
the mere
dog
capacity is capable of this kind of realm of people wherever they're at right now. However, there's a lot of different technological things that are left over from the world before. One of them is so not a submarine, but
what's it called?
You have marine and you have terra.
A subterrane, I called it.
A subterrane. Okay, so a subterrane, which is like kind of like my image of it, and I know they're probably a real thing. It's like a drill, but it's got like more than just what we can conceive of as its capability for digging. When it digs, it also just kind of eats up the material and kind of cakes and crystallizes it into a tunnel, which that was used to make, different tunnels. And it's about like a 9x9 circle. Like, what would that be? The circumference is about 9 feet. And so it can be, let's say, easily traveled. But if you had more than, several people, they'd all have to travel, let's say, single file. And I think right now you have a lot of, let's say, underground society built with these things from the past, but this is an old technology that is used or has been reclaimed, or parts of it are reclaimed for different purposes. And I think that's pretty close to where we left off as far as a basis of kind of getting some things started.
The only thing being is that the big beast, the protector drone, it shares a lot of characteristics with a dog, and it's a model. It has a model number, but the model type is I don't remember the exact acronym, but it's FIDO, FID 0.
Yeah, I wrote it down. You said 658 F3I5D0.
Or Fido for short.
Yeah, Fido. I like it.
So
Okay.
he's like basically a puppy the size of a freight train. Obviously, he's not as big as a freight train, but anyways.
Yeah, and you said after the factory reset, he's like he has the kind of the personality and the developmental characteristics of an 8-week-old puppy, and he's bonded with the hero.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I think we established that the people who were tracking, because in your opening scene, there was like a group of people who were kind of
Very
tracking
stealthy
some people.
and very attuned to smells and tracking this other group of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I got the idea that Cedric was kind of the leader of this war band. It was like 10 of them, and Reagan was like he was like especially sensitive to smells, and he wakes up Cedric and says the wind has changed, and we know they're on the other side of the river, and they have so then this crew is breaking camp, and they're like really in stealth mode. They're able to just melt into the forest or into the surrounding brush and cover.
Right. So what elements did you guys have? I had unique artifact.
I had government type.
I have happy ending, which was a little bit complicated because I felt like this story in particular had a lot of potential to go a lot of different ways, and so I came up with a happy ending that I could kind of lay out there, and I think it would leave room for us to fit a story into it that could go, not too circumscribed is what I'm saying. But otherwise, I could just hold off and have you guys go, and then I could maybe adapt too as we go.
I'd like to hear the government type because that'll really set the stage for a lot of things. But then maybe government type, and then I can talk about mine, and then we can see if we want to move to happy ending at that point.
Okay.
Okay, so the government type, you kind of have, at this point, a couple different things going on. You have, as we know, the kind of surface dwellers, and you have the subterranean dwellers. The subterranean dwellers have obtained, and again, this is, it just popped into my mind too. I didn't realize it, but I realized it just now as I'm saying this, that a while back I had something based on a book I was reading, and I was reading The Time Machine.
Yeah.
And I forget what they're called, but when he goes down the well, and like the white ape creatures,
the Morlocks.
Morlocks. Yeah.
They seem to be, and as he kind of describes it, the kind of the worker bees of society that had kind of been pushed down and down and down. And so they had retained a lot of, let's say, the mechanical technology of, say, the world before in its rudimentary ways, whereas the surface dwellers had the kind of lackadaisical frivolity of the elite that at some point the cultures just kind of separated so far, but that, one completely lacked the other in, all ways, and became two almost distinct species. But anyways, I just realized that the same kind of idea of the subterranean dwellers being almost like these what do you call it, the
Morlocks and the Eloi,
and
the surface dwellers were the Eloi. I think it's been a while.
I should know because I just read it, but I'm bad with names with stuff like that. But anyways, the not that they're like deformed ape people, but I would say that the government type of the subterranean dwellers has developed into that of they might not have the grandiose operation of the extent that technology had granted mankind, but they have like reproduced the remnants of it and have remanufactured it underground because they've adapted what's more of like an ant society or a hive. And that's kind of how they're organized, like all underground, all over the place. They're just hives. They have kind of all submitted through, I would say, technology that they have, whether it's like a reinvented like organic thing that they eat that has like nanobites in it that like keeps them connected to like the central governing power that can like redirect their thoughts and their actions and kind of like almost take control of individuals or in some cases larger groups through either a knockoff of an old technology or an old technology that has been refurbished into like the food or something that they have. And again, I think it has particular amount of range. So it's not like someone that's connected to this can go halfway across the world and still stay connected. It's like a hive. If they kind of boost their reception, they can gain a larger and larger hive. The more, let's say, stuff. And I'd say they have a lot of these subterranean vehicles and that's what they use to kind of dig out all of their, like ants, basically, they have their hills, their coves. And with their technology, they do have, let's say, access to like the underground, like aquifers. So they have, let's say, a more pleasant society with, ease of water, ease of, let's say, like hydroponic growing certain things. But again, they are mostly underground.
Would you say that individuality is lost and it's become a real regimented authoritarian society, or is there any humanity left?
I would say it's very little. I would say very little individuality. It's you have. I would say you have in their structure. You have like the queen bee, and it's not necessarily like a matriarch system. It's just the top figurehead is basically the person or the figure at the head control, and everything kind of filters down through him, and then like subgroups, or then you have like certain factions of it, like elite groups that then you might have the figurehead that is in ultimate control, and then you have like his subservient, like I guess let's say vassal lords, not less like in medieval,
Oligarchy.
but like the oligarchy, where then it's like you have the head of the manufacturing department, and he basically controls directly manufacturing of a certain area, and you have like the general, and he is like in direct submission to the king or the queen figure, but then he has like a direct, in a sense, manipulative mind control of certain things. Now again, like one particular person can't directly control everybody, but the main figure can kind of keep a direction on the 4 or 5 of his top oligarchy, who then filter down his wishes into the next groups. And so it's not a lot of individuality, but it's not like so just, let's say, mindless hive mind that they can interact, but most information that comes and goes gets filtered through like a very tight like Gestapo, basically.
Right. You kind of have to with a society that's so together, so cramped together, only in spaces that you've carved out, You have to like keep a really careful control about how many children everyone is having and how much food people have, and if anyone has any dissonant thoughts, because everyone's kind of, we have exactly 6,552 people in this hold, and if we get one more person, then the water recycling facility is not going to be able to hold up for it, and it's all going to fall apart. And so in that way, you can scare people. I think of Gurren Lagann. I don't know if you've seen that, Seth.
Yes, yes, I have. I was actually going to reference. I think I was going to reference it last time, but I forgot what it was called. Thank you.
Yeah, where Gurren Lagann is an anime, and it starts off where they're all like in these bunkers underground, like hiding, and everyone is told that we have to do this. This is what we have to do. You have to be underneath here. You have to be scared. You have to be. And it turns out that while the words of "we need to stay underground" were technically true and were technically keeping them safe, the way in which they had done it was a complete and total lie. A guy who can get some things done and can even force people to do things in like this way that you're talking, would make a lot of sense, that he would make people believe that they were sort of submitting to this kind of control for their own good. partially
right.
because it was true. The water purification system can only do this many, but all they have to do is keep a lie alive. What lie are they keeping alive that are keeping people enslaved?
And I think with that, so part of that would be if like they start getting too many numbers, the higher oligarchy is kind of connected to the other hives. And so they might like say, okay, we need a quote unquote a war, like a breakthrough over here.
Right.
And we need to, thin our numbers out. And so they kind of have a little clash. And there's this thing which then is like, oh no, there's like invaders and we have to like seal this off and we have to retreat back to here and we can't get too numerous or we're going to push into these other hives and just much like ants, I think.
Well, like the Morlocks eventually evolved to where even though the Eloi started out as the elite and they lived in luxury in the surface, but then it ended up that the Morlocks were literally livestock that the Morlocks would harvest for protein.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so what is the relationship? What is the interaction between the subterraneans and the surface dwellers?
So
personally,
you can do a lot of like hydroponics probably underground with artificial lighting and the water recycling systems. But outside of that, you are not going to get, like, again, in that case, the proteins from animals or other just things that aren't going to survive well underground. And so much like that, they're going to go to the surface with different groups and harvest things, take things, and they just kind of view the surface as like a vast
wilderness.
Wilderness of like winner takes all, grab what you can and make it back to the hive.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what you've got because the government type above ground isn't so much that everyone above ground is allied, but what they've kind of separated into is like small or different, I wouldn't say directly nomadic, but I'd say nomadic to a point, but not like there's not grand society above ground. They're like what they've been able to do. They're like sheep herders and flocks,
like clan structure.
Clan structure, but then but just kind of spread out, not necessarily like heavily concentrated in one area. Like as far as there's not like huge cities. Now that I'm like getting more, I don't know. But anyways, no, I'll kind of leave that. But anyways, so they're like loosely connected that they're all together surface dwellers. Right. But being that their main problem is that either in some cases they do trade with some hives. And so that's where you have like there's like certain doorways where on like some hives might have like, a festival day where like they come out with wares and they make trades and kind of this interchange. And so that creates like a place where, people can go but like the surface dwellers are almost like never allowed in. Although, I mean, they can, but then they have to accept the other part of the society. And so it might become like what's that?
It could be even as simple as the reason why they can't go, why no cities have grown up is one, because the original hives were originally large-scale bunkers, right? And they are positioned in every major city. And so it's easiest to build a city where there's already a city, but they can't because the hive people are there and they like won't let anyone above dig up all the ruins and, turn the electricity back on. There could also be the fact that it's been long enough that all technology has pretty much wasted away, So the only people who have automatic weapons anymore are the hive people, who the bunkers are where the refineries, the mill shops, all of those things survived, and those things didn't survive up, so they probably have muskets, up on the surface, or rifles, which are like extremely valuable. But, to get cartridges, you have to find a hive train station, and you have to trade with them in order to actually get cartridges, because it's not really a thing, So basically, it
probably only 2 or 3 hives that actually ally themselves, not ally like, we'll come and help and protect you, but ally themselves in a way where it's like, let's make a fair trade of this.
right.
And like again, like, there's like a grand door that opens like once every 3 months. And so it's like a grand, or like once every, what would become like what we would understand as like the solstice feast.
Yeah.
Has kind of replaced with a couple of these where it's like it's a giant festival where then it's like, everyone brings their wares and it makes like a giant like festival. The underground people come out, they make certain trades, and they go back in, and it's like something that only happens like according again like to the solstice, where then it's kind of very visible, like it's a very astrological observable thing, so people know at what time it's going to come, and then they can find their way and go there. But there's only like maybe a few hives that do that. Most other ones are very shut up, and then just kind of send subsequent raids on, as they would see it, the lesser people.
Right.
Basically,
And they can show up with
want.
like night vision goggles with automatic, silenced weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Almost seeming boogeyman-ish. Almost
and just
seeming
appear, and then they do their raid and kill people and take stuff, and then their subterranean just
yeah,
back
just like
down.
they just like disappear again.
Mm-hmm. And so what you've got is up top. What's been forming is the different either societies or groups of like upland rangers, where they might have bits and pieces of technology, but again, the hives aren't going to let them have. They're not going to trade night vision goggles. They might trade a few, cartridges
Batteries.
or batteries, but nothing high tech according to what they have. But they're very, so these say updwellers, like if you have like some means, you might have like a couple fancy things, but they're very limited in their capability. And so what the rangers have had to do is like what we have with Reagan is attune their other senses to adequate, hiding from like the geothermal sensors that these people have, or the other technology, and ways that then they basically go about repelling or tracking down and eliminating extrusions into the uplands. I will call them that, the uplands and the subterranean.
I'm thinking, like you mentioned something about the nanotechnology that created that hive interaction capacity also stunted the ability to function on an individual basis.
Right.
And so you have, even though conditions are such now that repopulating the surface and redeveloping, kind of getting back on the track of human development would be certainly possible, but the hive mentality has got them in such a rigid control. I'm seeing that Fido, like the guy that's training Fido right now, he's probably like, I'd like to see that guy has some vision of he's connected with, of course, the technology people.
Yeah. I just had this idea that they're tracking someone. That's where the story starts. And then they come across a man or a person, whatever, who is kind of, abandoned. Maybe they sort of come into a clearing or are watching at a train station as the people that they were pursuing, the people they were pursuing who did the raid kind of have a guy, and they kind of like throw him down, and they like strip off all of his like fancy armor gear and everything. And I was thinking about how the hero sort of becomes a dissonant voice. And my thought is that, so he was part of the subterrane, like super elite, like a super elite raiding or military group, like just crazy elite. And basically he had used this position he had in order to let his mother, who was old and no longer able to produce labor, no longer able to work, he had used the fact that he was like one of their best to basically make space for her.
Oh, yeah, I see. Privilege.
Yeah. So
normally they'd have to get rid of the useless eaters.
Right. And so she was allowed to kind of just be alive, and be an quote unquote unproductive person. But because she was his mother, she was allowed to, and he like had this position of power. And then they failed a mission. And as punishment, the leaders basically forced him via this kind of hive mind control stuff to dispose of her. And that caused his body to basically have such an overwhelming emotional / psychological response that it cut him off from the hive.
Cool.
And so he basically, he is now completely useless to them because they can't control him. And so they just basically dump him. Maybe they're supposed to kill him, but then the group of rangers or whatever rescue him.
Yeah.
So and what happened, so they lost their subterranean vehicle because of the raiders or the rangers. And so they have to get back to a different opening. They have to get back to one of their other hive openings.
Yeah.
And that's why they're chasing or having to run back to there. However, if they don't have the supplies, their strength to that is going to weaken to the hive if they don't have a constant kind of rebuttal to that. And so I think maybe because of kind of like what you said, by the time they catch up or they do come across and kind of rescue him from, maybe he breaks first and causes trouble because he's already dealing with that other trauma. And so they kind of tie him up or something, or maybe that's...
Yeah.
I don't think Fido would like that.
Well, I don't think that he's met Fido yet. That's the thing, is that he basically he's relied on his sound dampening clothing. He's relied on his automatic targeting rifle. He's relied on his night vision goggles. He's relied on his protein pellets. He's relied on his suit that recycles his water. All the water he excretes and makes it so he makes no sound or smell. He's an elite fighter, but he's an elite fighter who's really only an elite fighter when he has all of his toys. And so what we see is an incredibly passionate and skilled person who then is taken under the wing of the Rangers and blossoms as he actually has to be a real individual and learns to operate in a group with people who operate as if they were part of this hive mentality, in a group connected to each other, understanding what each other need and want, but they do it voluntarily. They do it through friendship. It isn't a forced action upon them, And
it's a collaboration
of
wills that individuals just bond to form a team, not a hive.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, then he has a grudge against this specific hive, so that could make its way in the story. Or, maybe he could go with them and, it could be a story of a lot of his kind of preconceived notions about what upperlanders, is that what you called them, Seth?
Yep.
Yeah, the uplanders, his preconceived notions about how, there's waste up in the upland because they don't understand the need of being, connected to each other or whatever. The lies that they have to tell. Because even though these people who live in the subterranes, even though they are controlled in a lot of ways. That's control that they've given over. You know, this isn't the Borg who can't change their minds.
Right.
You know, this isn't 100% mind control. He's like the indicator that it's not 100% mind control, that it's just, it's maybe this technology was created in order for like deep underground miners to all take this so that they could react to each other. It's like, it's a team building experience. We don't have the time to have people grow and experience with each other. We're going to introduce these nanobots to make them more of a team, you know? And this has just been used
through their eyes, know where everyone is, and like direct like input via, you know, like radio brainwaves to know what, you know, needs to happen or is happening.
Right. But it's clearly been taken way out of its original use, and even its original use was departing away from normal everyday human interaction. Well, should we hear about the unique
artifact?
Should we hear about the unique artifact?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I decided to go super buck wild and crazy and say that this pre-world, whatever it was that was before, was a golden age. It was a bright and shining future. It's the thing everyone thinks that the future is going to be, right? Back in the 15 and 1800s when they looked at the year 2000, right? And they had people like walking on rivers, like looking at each other in, you know, video calls, like flying around in, you know what I mean? It was the beautiful future. It was a post-scarcity society, right? So there was no more scarcity. So world hunger was no longer a thing. It was post-scarcity, so no one needed anything. People still owned property. It wasn't like a completely devoid of possession place, but it was definitely post-scarcity. There was opportunity. Most war had been eradicated. Most wars were fought in the what's it called? Most wars were fought in no, not virtual reality, but in like the sports, in the Olympics kind of thing. You know, conflicts were resolved and countries were okay with basically resolving their issues via like an Olympic Games. And no one, like, I don't know what caused the war. Clearly it was the fact that people sort of rose past, or whatever goal that they had created for themselves, whatever war that had birthed this society, they forgot about it. Right. And those who do not remember the past are doomed to repeat it.
Mm-hmm. I think of like, you know, I've been around since the 50s, so it's just what it is. But back in 1931, Winston Churchill wrote an essay called Mass Effects, and he talked about how war was forever changed by World War I and the incredible capacity for technology to kill in mass, and for communications, mass communications, mass transit, all these things that society was forever changed. And instead of petty tyrants exerting some misery over a few of his neighbors, now petty tyrants would be asserting misery over giant swaths of the population, and how it's forever changed the way humans interaction would look. And then after the World War II, which was just basically World War II just proved everything Winston Churchill predicted. And Pax Americana, with American power, military power rising to the surface and being the superpower, and with with atomic weapons, the idea of a mass conflict, a mass global war was unthinkable because, we were trained that it would be the end of mankind as we know it. And then so there was the Cold War and the standoff, and then the breakup of the Soviet Union, and then this period where just little brush fire wars, but not any big deal. But it was all held together only as long as America was not corrupt. And as corruption increased, what we're saying, I could just see that this post-scarcity society would still be populated by people.
Right.
And sometimes some of them are bastards.
Right. And they had to know it was coming, right? Because the bunkers were built and stocked.
Yes, and Fido's missile base.
Yeah, Fido was a thing.
Yeah.
The missile silos, the nuclear missile silos, the antimatter missile silos, the light bombs that could turn everything to dust. Whatever it was, the neutrino bombs, the even more complicated and terrifying ways of wreaking destruction. Clearly, they had done it. One of the hallmarks, one of the idols as the war began to ramp up, as it turned from cold to slightly warm, was a soldier, right? But since the wars used to be fought in the Olympic Games, she was of course first an athlete, and second a fighter. Her primary skill was javelin toss, and her father, who was the top scientist of one of the biggest corporations at the time, when it was basically solidified that she was going to be sort of the symbolic head of this country's military, basically went to work at crafting her a unique set of armor and weapons that would play into her strengths and that would allow her to use her skills. So the armor was sort of a skin-tight suit that could become transparent, that could basically shift into a quasi-invisibility. It could hide her thermal signal. It would, as long as it had power, could turn energy into sustenance. She would never need to eat. She could wear it as long as she saw the daylight for at least 3 hours a day. She would never need to eat. She could go for up to 2.5 weeks without sleeping. She could run faster, jump higher, go for longer, see in the dark, see every spectrum of light. It was basically a marvel. And it's what has turned into a lot of the things that our hero has used, right? Soundproof boots, suits that recycle water. They're all copies of what this scientist made for his daughter, the head of this country's military. But the unique artifact is more of a unique weapon, and so I apologize because I just thought of it, and that's just what I decided to go with, is a javelin. It's the size of a standard javelin. I believe it's about 4 or 5 feet. It's pitch black. So it's pitch black. It holds no heat, so it cannot be picked up by any heat. It cannot be detected by any form of... it emits a specific particle that any computer that looks at it does not see it. New or old. Even human beings, when they look right at it, their eyes kind of slide past it. They're not sure if it emits some sort of wave, some sort of particle, some sort of high-pitched noise. In fact, the people, when it has come in conflict with the subterranes, because they have the nanotechnology, they literally cannot recognize that it exists.
Cool.
So it emits someone else's problem.
Exactly. It emits someone else's problem.
He couldn't figure out the invisibility technique, and he says, let someone else deal with it. It'll be their problem. And poof, it just kind of almost faded, and it was
someone else's problem.
someone else's problem.
It can do. There's a couple of really crazy things it can do. One, it can increase its own mass. So if when you're holding it and you're connected to it, it can increase its own mass in order to become extremely heavy. It can decrease its own mass in order to become, lighter than a toothpick. So it can be aimed. The throw can be started. It could be the perfect mass at the throw's start. And then it can, as you throw it, increase or decrease its mass. And then right before hitting, increase its mass in order to prove devastating.
So you could throw it a long, long ways, and then it would hit with devastating force.
The books, the hollow books, and the recordings say that she killed upwards of 200,000 people in the wars.
Wow.
I mean, this is just one, right? Every single country had a champion.
Mm-hmm.
One of them had a trident, and
one of them had a hammer. One of
hammer.
them was fast. One of them was the strongest ever. Hers was special because her father was a scientist, but all of them were considered the sort of culmination of their country's ability. Anyway, so the unique artifact is this javelin. It's literally just sitting in a locker in one of the subterranes. It's been sitting in that locker for 200 years because the subterranes literally cannot recognize that it exists. And at some point in time, someone who is not connected to the nanobots is going to look at it and pick it up and decide to use it.
So this was this was part of the culture prior to where you would have the champions resolve conflicts in the games, but then the unthinkable happened and it all broke down, and they unleashed hell.
Right. And it almost seems like they were ready for that already because they had these champions,
mm-hmm.
Who could do great feats of strength. They still did quote unquote friendly wrestling matches. I mean, competition was still a thing. So it's like people still were training, and it's like at the back of everyone's mind, they kind of knew, but war had been eradicated for so long that no one was quite ready for what could happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'd been using these light bombs that could, destroy, like just literally vaporize everything in a certain radius to like clear mountains and like retrofit, planets and stuff.
Right.
But they all remember, they've read in the books about when they were used against people, but no one quite had it in their brains how terrible it would be to use it against each other until they did. It's like everyone valued the nutritional clothing, the clothing that just like fed you so that you didn't have to worry about it. You're on a backpacking trip, you don't have to worry about it. You're on a deep sea exploration, don't worry about it. Everyone said, oh, that's fine, or clothing that would increase your strength. Everyone said, oh, that's so great. You can lift up bigger rocks now. They never expected that a human being could become capable of moving faster than what you could see through a room where everyone's head would be torn off before anyone had even noticed that something had happened. Just the horrible atrocities. And that, I think that a society that isn't aware of what it's capable of, a person even that isn't aware of what they're capable of, can't really be trusted to be at peace. I think you have to know how capable you are of violence before you can choose to do not violence. You can't just say, well, I don't want to have to know what'll bring me to that place. You need to know what will bring you to the place of violence. You need to know where it is so that you know to walk away from it, or so that you know to do the right thing. But anyways, that's my opinion about human society. So that's the unique artifact. It's this javelin. The suit has, is gone, whatever, but the javelin is still around. The suit might not be gone, but it's been like 800 years. So who knows where the suit is, but the javelin has made its way to a locker in one of the on one of the subterranean vaults. Yeah. So does this hero, does he travel with, obviously he travels with the Rangers, kind of learning from them and them learning from him, and soon he becomes like a Ranger himself, and then there's some like great task that he has to do,
Right.
something.
I think, so I have a slight idea. I don't know, like, how far along are we on this one?
We're like 50 minutes.
50 minutes?
Yeah, do we want to pause this and here reads happy ending and then to go for a third one?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
This happy ending is going to leave room for story development.
Okay.
Okay, so the scene is much like the beginning scene. Cedric opens his eyes, and the campfire is pretty much burned out. Reagan says, the wind has changed, but it's different. And settling in a little open area next to the Rangers' campsite is a flying craft that settles gently, and the doors open, and the guy steps down, and he's got very slick clothing and fitted looking gear, and he looks at them and said, I'm Captain Farnsworth of the spacecraft Adventure, and we are from the Voyager colony. And as you know, if you know the history, when we left relay stations, and several hundred years ago, we received a message that things had gone to hell, and that there was the apocalypse now signal had come out, and so we decided to send a rescue team to travel back and see if there was anything left to pick up, and we sensed we've been tracking from orbit, and we've followed your movements, and we decided to make contact. We were in cryo sleep for many years till we came out out of automation, and we're orbiting the planet, and we came to see how you guys were.
Great. That'll be a great ending.
I thought he was going to come out and say, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for the second episode of this, what's probably going to be a 3-part series. If you like these episodes, just let me know, if you would. It's Waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or @getsbettercast. If you didn't like these episodes, that's okay. We have lots of different episodes of lots of different kinds. If you listen to the other episodes and you still didn't like them, I would say just wait, because it gets better.